honor to invite His Excellency Mr. Nicolas Maduro Moros, President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, to address the conference. And I request, and he is also going to speak on behalf of NAM, the Non-Aligned Movement. I request the protocol to escort His Excellency.
Buenos días.
Good morning. To my brother Rafael Correa, President of the Friendly Republic of Ecuador, I wish to convey at the outset the warm greetings to the people of Ecuador, also to the people of Quito. Throughout history, this has been the land of our father, of other giants also, the General Alfaro Quito and Marshal Sucre. This is thus is an ideal location, and we are happy to be here at the third Habitat Conference on housing and sustainable urban development. Mr. Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, Mr. Peter Thompson, President of the General Assembly of the United Nations, Mr. Juan Clos, Secretary General of the Habitat Conference, distinguished members and heads of delegation, we have come to this conference, the third Habitat Conference, after traveling the road from Vancouver in 1976 to Istanbul in 1996, and all roads have led to Quito. In seeking, through the United Nations system and through the human race, a road forward to meet one of the major problems created through development and capitalism of the 20th century, the problem of housing, of family stability, of communities, the problem of poverty and huge migration waves throughout the regions, throughout our countries, throughout this 20th century, which have led to the urban explosions and the concentration of enormous numbers of migrants within our countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, in Africa and in Asia, which above all affect the countries of the South. They're affected by very serious problems in access to land, urban land, the right to the city, the right to development, to housing, to the community, and the right to peace. So we welcome the fact that the social organizations of the world and the United Nations system, together with the Habitat system, have persevered in sustaining this movement that began in 1976 in Vancouver and then in Istanbul in 1996, and which brought us to Quito with this important declaration of the new urban agenda, with commitments, very direct and tangible commitments, recalling the experience of the past and the challenges, establishing the challenges that our countries must address. Venezuela has seen modest developments since 1999. We have seen extraordinary experience with a revolution in housing and habitat as part of the social dimension of the democratic revolution, the peaceful constitutional revolution that was begun by Commandant Hugo Chavez all those years ago. And in our constitution in Venezuela, which was drawn up with the broadest possible participation of the people, the first constitution in 200 years, voted through a referendum by the people. For the first time, I say, in the 1999 constitution, where we see the right to housing as a fundamental human right in Article 82 of the chapter on human rights. For the first time, I say, we see this right to housing given the status of a constitutional right, a fundamental right to support families and communities. And from 1999, there were many attempts on the basis of the definitions of Vancouver and Istanbul, and on the basis of this search to overcome the capitalist model, which defines land and housing as goods rather than the right of peoples and families. There was a process that brought us from 1999 to 2011. We tried various approaches and we saw some successes, partial successes, but they need to be sustained through financing. In 2011, the experience that we had been sharing with governments throughout the world, when Hugo Chavez founded the housing movement in Venezuela as a special mission. This was set up as a major mission, and there were 5 central pillars of this movement, which together under a single mandate made it possible to focus efforts of our republic on the central objective in addressing the challenges of housing. So we had these 5 fundamental pillars. The first is land, the right to land, the social function of land, which is set out perfectly through the Quito Declaration of 2016. Democratization of the use of urban land, reorganization of land. Thus, a special law was adopted for that purpose. It made it possible to reorganize urban matters and the use of urban land in connection with the right to life, the right to housing, and the social functions attached to those. Secondly, financing. That is the second pillar, financing. The use of the resources of the public and private sectors, investment of resources in the national currency and internationally in dollars. This made it possible to focus financial resources of our country on housing, social housing, to address this problem, and the generation, in terms of financing, of new mechanisms to provide true, genuine access of workers, men, women, peasants, female-headed households, people with disabilities, teachers, police officers, army personnel, all people to have access to financing in order to obtain direct access to the right to housing. That's the second pillar, I say, financing. And we talked about the pillars of popular power. It's organized by the people to define these projects. People are constructing for themselves. Now, in Venezuela, we can say that the experience has resulted in 40% of the housing that's being built over these successful years being built directly by communities. They designed the projects themselves and built them themselves with the support and financing of the government and the support of their right to property, to urban and urban land. That is another pillar. The next pillar that allowed for progress is connected with the organization of materials, machinery. Now, we see from our experience the industrialization of the right to housing. This is a central concept. Industrialization, concentration of resources, material resources, cement, access to building materials by people carrying out projects, social organizations mainly. And another pillar in this project of ours over the years is the executive pillar. There are three levels. First of all, there's public bodies committed to the project, public organizations, ministries. That made it possible to establish who is responsible for what. Secondly, we have the power of the people, social power, social organizations, duly involved and supported in the technical, architectural and other aspects. And the third is the private sector. That's the third partner, nationally, internationally. And we have built important alliances with countries that provided technology, capital, experience in carrying out projects. The People's Republic of China has considerable experience in building cities throughout the country. The Islamic Republic of Iran has also excellent experience in quality, fast urban construction. Portugal, Spain, the Russian Federation, Belarus, India, a huge international alliance which made it possible for us to bring to our country new technologies and incorporate the latest advances in architecture globally, with a dialogue of civilizations taking place on the ground as regards the art of architecture for our people. These are the pillars that made it possible for us to make progress like never before in building housing for our communities. Over the past 5 years, we have achieved this and provided to ordinary families 1,760,000 housing units. This is a country with 28 million inhabitants. The objective this year is that by December we plan to hand over 1.5 million housing units and move towards the objective of the National Housing Census, which we currently in 2011, 3 million housing units by 2019. That is our housing mission in Venezuela, which has made it possible to carry out a miracle in the transformation of our cities, overcoming poverty for our country, and to move forward and implement the Vancouver and Istanbul principles in synergy with the Quito Declaration. Now, investment over these 5 years to achieve these objectives and this urban transformation with this reorganization in our country has been $95,000 million, which is 4 times our GNP. And these sums, this is the biggest sum that has been invested in the history of our country. This has made it possible for us to trust that the objectives in the Quito Declaration will make it possible for us to strengthen this housing policy. I want to share with you another experience, another project that we have carried out in the past 4 years with a plan to reorganize existing districts. The new district plan, it's a complementary plan. The housing mission plans to hand over 3 million units, as I was saying, by 2019 for new communities. The new districts project plans to repair and reconstruct with communities. We have made progress on this object. About 1 million housing units have been renovated, and this is a shared dream. By 2019, we want to have 6 million renovations and new housing units altogether for these modest districts. All of this is under the constitutional mandate that for the first time we have been able to incorporate in Article 82. And under the new urban agenda, we are converting our new communities into the epicenter of public efforts for health, culture, production. We want productive communities. In the delegation, we have the Minister of Housing and Habitat Development, as well as the Minister for Urban Culture. We have important urban economic projects for urban agriculture to change the paradigm. We have, particularly in oil-producing countries like Venezuela, we turn into dependent consumers of products imported from outside, and we had stopped producing our own produce. We need to change the productive culture. Generations have not been involved in the sacred relationship with Pachamama, with the earth, creating with our own hands from the soil. So in these urban economic projects for the new communities, we have a special project that we want to share in the working group. Urban agriculture as a flagship project in our efforts. The same is true for culture, sport. The new or reconstructed communities need to be the center of comprehensive development of social and economic rights. They need to be able to live well. This is what we must bring about. Likewise, Mr. President and delegations, we believe that this statement and these plans must turn into a commitment. International plans and we must involve other aspects of United Nations activity. These are being debated in the non-aligned movement and throughout all of the debating bodies. Humanity now is looking with pain at the refugee crisis, at terrorism, at the Mediterranean crisis, the European crisis. And there seems to be a sort of silence imposed. There's a profound crisis, and we don't seem to identify the causes. We are hearing certain European authorities not addressing the true causes of the refugee crisis. The cause, of course, is the destruction of the refugees' countries of origin. Certain countries like Libya have been destroyed by bombardment, destroying homes and families. Others have been affected by poverty, by inequality, by hunger. These people need jobs and stable housing. We need to exchange missiles for housing. Would that not be better to calculate the cost of the bombs being dropped on these people in Syria and invest all of those millions of dollars in noble projects built by humanity, which can be a reality? We take this opportunity to use this forum to point to that. The cause of the refugees in Europe cannot be addressed by persecuting our brothers in the Arab countries, Muslim brothers, African brothers. It must be combated by investing in development, health, education, housing, habitat, and the right to life. The non-aligned countries are raising a banner of justice, equality, and peace. And the new urban agenda is essentially an agenda of peace. We dream of a new world. There's the dialogue of civilizations. We believe profoundly in that. We need a human civilization that holds dialogue with mutual respect for culture, politics, and for our differences. Then we can speak of development of an agenda of peace. Likewise, we have a proposal to make to the G77 China, the Secretary General of UNASUR, the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. We call urgently for solidarity for Haiti. Recently, a delegation of our government went to Haiti. And, you know, the disaster of inequality, the invasions, the dictatorships have been added to by the earthquake of 2010, and Haiti was just getting to its feet, and now Hurricane Matthew has left many thousands of families homeless and with nowhere to sleep. We call urgently for assistance for Haiti. The non-aligned movement proposes an urgent initiative for there to be a meeting in New York, a solidarity meeting focused on the people of Haiti, in order to join forces physically, materially, financially, to go to help Haiti, support Haiti. Let us leave that proposal with you in this conference on housing, habitat, and social and sustainable development. Looking at the new urban agenda and the Quito Declaration, I want to thank all of the movements, the social organizations, the officials who have worked so hard and passionately to uphold these proposals for sustainable development and the right to the city, democratization of urban land, the right to financing. That's one of the key points mentioned by the mayor of Quito, Mr. Roda. He spoke today of financing. That is key. Access to financing in our countries, access to new technologies. We believe that there needs to be efforts focused on that, on the basis of this successful World Conference headed by our brother Rafael Correa. We must focus on turning into reality accessible financing for our peoples and implement the principles contained within the new urban agenda, which we commit ourselves to. President Correa, thank you very much for the invitation, and the Bolivarian revolution is always marching forward, and we will be first in the battle for freedom and for peace within the world. Thank you.
The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela to address the conference, and I request, and he is also going to speak on behalf of NAM, the Non-Aligned Movement. I request the protocol to escort His Excellency. I thank the Vice President of the International Society of City and Regional Planners and Vice President of the General Assembly of Partners of Habitat 3. In accordance with Decision 4/2016 of the Preparatory Committee for the conference, the opening segment was also to include a statement by the President of the Economic and Social Council. However, due to a prior commitment, the President of the Council was unable to participate in the conference. Thus, we have heard the last speaker for the opening segment of this conference. Distinguished heads of state and government, ministers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, before proceeding with the consideration of the organizational items on the provisional agenda, delegations are informed that all official documents are also available on the conference website. The conference will now consider item 3 of the provisional agenda, entitled Adoption of the Rules of Procedure. Delegations have before them a note by the Secretariat issued as document A/conf.226/2 containing the provisional rules of procedure for the conference. May I take it that the conference agrees to adopt the rules of procedure as contained in document A/conf.226/2? I hear no objection. It is so decided. The conference has thus concluded its consideration of agenda item 3. The conference will now take up item 4 of the provisional agenda, entitled Adoption of the Agenda. I would like to draw the attention of delegations to document A/conf.226/1, which contains the provisional agenda for the conference. May I take it that the conference wishes to adopt the agenda as contained in document A/conf.226/1? I hear no objection. So decided. The conference has thus concluded its consideration of agenda item 4. Now, item 5. The conference will take up item 5 of the agenda, entitled Election of Officers Other than the President. Under Rule 6 of the Rules of Procedure, the conference shall elect from among representatives of participating states, and on the basis of ensuring the representative character of the General Committee, 14 vice presidents and a rapporteur general. With regard to the election of the vice presidents, I have been informed that there is general agreement among delegations to elect the following countries. From Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, and Senegal. From the Asia Pacific, the Philippines and the State of Palestine. From Eastern Europe, the Czech Republic, Estonia, and the Russian Federation. From Latin America and the Caribbean, Argentina. From Western Europe and other states, no nomination received as of this time. May I take it that the conference wishes to elect Argentina, the State of Palestine, the Russian Federation, Philippines, Kenya, Nigeria, Czech Republic, and Senegal as vice presidents by acclamation? So agreed. On behalf of the conference, I congratulate the vice presidents on their election. The election of the remaining vice presidents will take place as soon as the nominations have been communicated. Again, the election of the remaining vice presidents will take place as soon as the nominations have been communicated. I now invite the conference to proceed with the election of the Rapporteur General of the conference. I have been informed that there is general understanding among all delegations to elect Mr. Mamadou Mbodj of Senegal as Rapporteur General of the conference. In accordance with Rule 6 of the Rules of Procedure, may I take it that the conference wishes to elect, by acclamation, Mr. Mamadou Mbodj of Senegal as Rapporteur General of the conference? I see no objection, so decided. On behalf of the conference, I congratulate Mr. Mamadou Mbodj of Senegal on his election as Rapporteur General of the conference and invite him to take his seat at the podium.
La conferencia ha concluido así.
Thus, the conference has concluded its consideration of Agenda Item 5. The conference will now consider Item 6 of the agenda entitled Organization of Work, including the establishment of subsidiary bodies and other organizational matters. The conference has before it a note by the Secretariat entitled Organizational and Procedural Matters, contained in document A/conf.226/3. May I take it that the conference wishes to approve the organization of work as set out in document A/conf.226/3. I see no objection, so decided. The conference has thus concluded this stage of its consideration of Agenda Item 6. Distinguished heads of state and government, ministers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the conference will now commence its general debate under Agenda Item 8. In accordance with the organizational work of the conference, as contained in document A/conf.226/3, statements in the general debate should not exceed 5 minutes. Delegations are reminded that a longer version of their statement can be made available on the conference website.
Robles, ministra de Desarrollo Agrario, Territorial y Urbano de México.
Buenas tardes, Su Excelencia, señora María Duarte, vicepresidenta de la conferencia, miembros de esta mesa, señoras y señores delegados, señoras y señores. A nombre de México y del presidente Enrique Peña Nieto, quiero agradecer al presidente Rafael Correa y al gobierno y pueblo de Ecuador por su hospitalidad, y a la ONU, particularmente a ONU Habitat, por la organización de esta conferencia y felicitar por su trabajo a quienes se encargaron de la redacción de la nueva Agenda Urbana, de la que México participó como uno de los países cofacilitadores para llegar al documento final. Tenemos ante nosotros una ruta de trabajo para nuestras ciudades y compromisos muy serios y de enorme trascendencia para nuestros gobiernos en todos sus órdenes. La nueva Agenda Urbana es un llamado de atención poderoso y bien intencionado para que todos los actores concurramos en la vía de las ciudades y las metrópolis. Es necesario que esta conferencia nos sirva para tener claro que si nos comprometemos a un cambio de paradigma, que si coincidimos en que millones de personas en todo el planeta necesitan condiciones de bienestar muy superiores a los que les ofrecen sus ciudades, entonces debemos reconocer que todos los actores deben imaginar una forma diferente de hacer las cosas. Tenemos que superar las visiones compartimentadas y regionalistas del desarrollo. Tenemos que superar la idea de la política como la ganancia de pocos a costa de los muchos. Tenemos que superar la idea del negocio privado como algo reñido con el bienestar público y tenemos que asumir que todas las personas, independientemente de su posición social, de su condición de género, de su edad o del color de su piel, tienen saberes que pueden usarse en beneficios de todos. Con la aprobación de la nueva Agenda Urbana, culminaremos con éxito una etapa muy difícil, que es la de los consensos internacionales. Hoy tenemos que trabajar para construir los consensos y los apoyos necesarios a nivel nacional para implementar los objetivos de la agenda con una visión global, innovadora y sostenible. México llega a esta conferencia con un gran compromiso y con hechos concretos, con una gran participación además de la sociedad civil, de expertos de la academia, para poder posicionar a nuestro país en este proceso de la nueva agenda urbana. No podía ser de otra manera. Se trata del reto de transformar la vida de 90 millones, de 8 de cada 10 mexicanos y mexicanas que vivimos en las ciudades y que se caracterizan por su desarrollo desigual y desordenado. Para México, el siglo XXI es el de la reforma urbana y este proceso ya se ha iniciado. Primero, con reformas a la administración pública para crear una secretaría destinada al desarrollo urbano y territorial que antes no existía. Se ha puesto en marcha una nueva política nacional de vivienda que parte de la premisa de que construir vivienda es para construir ciudades, para construir comunidades, para construir hogares. Con una de las 11 reformas estructurales impulsadas por el Gobierno de la República, la financiera, se permite el acceso al crédito de la vivienda en mejores condiciones al tiempo que se han fortalecido los instrumentos financieros solidarios del Estado para que los que menos tienen puedan ejercer su derecho a la vivienda. Y recientemente, con la aprobación por parte del Poder Legislativo de una nueva Ley General de Asentamientos Humanos, Ordenamiento Territorial y Desarrollo Urbano, que sustituye a la que estaba vigente desde hace 40 años y que incorpora, entre otros temas, aspectos tan relevantes como el derecho a la ciudad, la participación democrática y la transparencia en la planeación de las ciudades, el rescate del espacio público, la resiliencia, la sustentabilidad y la gobernanza metropolitana. Al mismo tiempo, trabajamos de la mano con ONU Habitat en la medición del bienestar en 132 ciudades a través del Índice de Prosperidad Urbana. Para México, la nueva agenda urbana debe estar basada en 3 grandes principios transversales: el derecho a la ciudad, la perspectiva de género y la accesibilidad universal. La postura de México en el proceso de elaboración de la nueva agenda urbana ha sido consistente con una visión de derechos y en concordancia con los compromisos asumidos con los objetivos del desarrollo sostenible, particularmente el 11, con la COP21 y con esta nueva agenda urbana que discutimos en esta conferencia. Paralelamente, debemos generar nuevos incentivos para recuperar la función social del suelo, para generar esquemas de movilidad vinculados al transporte masivo, a la bicicleta y a las vías peatonales, para incluir a todos y a todas, para reforzar la planeación y para acceder a las fuentes de financiamiento necesarias para consolidar a nuestras ciudades. Uno de los mayores retos de la implementación de la nueva agenda urbana es el de acortar las brechas de desigualdad, de integrar al desarrollo a quienes más lo necesitan, que el desarrollo no sea una fábrica de exclusión, sino una plataforma para la inclusión social. En otras palabras, tenemos que aprender a trabajar en lo local con una perspectiva global. El enorme impacto ambiental de la vida en las ciudades no deja otra opción que aceptar que el destino de una ciudad específica tiene una trascendencia global. Y ese es un cambio en el paradigma de la responsabilidad que todos los actores debemos asumir. Comprometidos con la igualdad, en México creemos que la nueva agenda urbana tiene que enfatizar la importancia de la perspectiva de género en las políticas públicas para las ciudades, porque no hacerlo equivale a excluir del bienestar a la mitad de la población del país y del mundo, y ese sería un futuro injusto que sencillamente nos movemos de manera diferente en las ciudades y pugnamos por la igualdad, por tener la capacidad de decisión sobre los asuntos más importantes de la vida social, por ser dueñas de nuestras ciudades, porque nos queremos vivas, libres, autónomas y no queremos más ser objetos de hostigamiento y de violencia en el espacio público. Aprobamos la nueva agenda urbana en un contexto internacional difícil, con poco crecimiento económico, con alta volatilidad e incertidumbre mundial. Pero es justo en las épocas críticas en las que los valores y los principios se ponen a prueba. México asume hoy plenamente su compromiso con la nueva agenda urbana, porque estamos hablando de la calidad de vida, de la prosperidad y de la felicidad de millones de personas, de hombres, de mujeres, de jóvenes, de niños y niñas, de personas con discapacidad, que son el centro de toda nuestra acción y de todo nuestro compromiso. Ni más ni menos. Muchas gracias.
I now call upon Her Excellency Corina Creatu, European Commissioner for Regional and Urban Policy of the European Union.
Hello, distinguished Chair, dear Minister, Excellencies, dear colleagues, buenas tardes. I would like, of course, to add my thanks to Ecuador and the city of Quito for hosting the third United Nations Conference on Housing and Sustainable Development, and also extend my gratitude to everyone contributing to its successful preparation. I have the honor to speak on behalf of the European Union and its member states. And of course, the European Union is very pleased to take part at this historical conference where the new urban agenda will be adopted. A new urban agenda, universal in scope, which reflects the world's shared vision and joint commitment to harness the extraordinary potential for sustainable development of the urbanization process across its social, environmental and economic dimensions. I welcome the new urban agenda as a cornerstone in the implementation and localization of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and other milestone reforms agenda for 2015, in particular the Paris Agreement. I praise the new urban agenda as an instrument that guides us in turning these challenges of global concern into powerful opportunities to ensure that no one is left behind. The new urban agenda reflects the EU's vision for sustainable urban development by calling for an integrated and place-based approach that takes into account the diversity of cities while building on urban-rural linkages. It keeps at its core human rights-based approach and promotes the indivisibility and universality of human dignity and women empowerment, which is considered vital to achieving sustainable and inclusive development. You know that yesterday I met a number of mayors. I realized that we don't have enough women mayors in the world, and I am committed to come back to Brussels and start a campaign for having more women in the local administration. So I hope that will be a sign that we are all equal and we all can contribute to the benefit of the life of our citizens at the local level, in the national level. So I'm convinced that this urban governance is key to achieving the ambitious paradigm shifts called for the new urban agenda. You know that the European Union and its member states are already effectively working towards this vision. During the summer, we have adopted the urban agenda for the European Union, which is based on a partnership approach involving cities and other stakeholders, aims at better including the urban dimension into EU policies. This means involving cities in the design of policies and mobilizing cities in the delivery of policies. The European Union agenda seeks to promote more effective and efficient regulations, needs-oriented funding, more integrated policy making, and a better knowledge-based and exchange process. The urban agenda for the European Union is a key delivery instrument of the new urban agenda within the European Union and in the world. The European Union and the Member States are also committed to engaging with partners around the globe to jointly address the challenges of urban poverty and exclusion for the benefit of sustainable development in our partner countries overall. I underline this requires a renewed commitment to strengthening the capacity of the subnational and local governments in all aspects of governance. Since I am Commissioner for Regional Policy and Urban Dimension, I can tell you that money is not everything. The most important, I think, is the administrative capacity in dealing and designing good and high-quality projects that really can make an impact in the life of the citizens. So I underscore our will to strengthen the administrative capacities of the cities, in particular in revenue generation and access to finance. Furthermore, I commit to promote sustainable spatial planning and the equitable management of land markets, as well as the development of sustainable, resilient and low-emission infrastructure network. We will also strengthen the data and statistical capacities at all governance levels. Progress towards a global people-based definition of cities and human settlements may support this work. The new urban agenda is the outcome of our joint efforts to formulate a truly transformative agenda for the benefit of the citizens and improving the quality of their lives. We have all we need. We have all elements needed to go beyond business as usual and to localize the Sustainable Development Goals adopted last year. So let's work together. I think only together we can bring the global new urban agenda to life and turn the global challenges of sustainable urbanization into global opportunities for all. Let us not miss this historical momentum. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much.
Doy las gracias al primer ministro del Reino de Lesoto por su declaración. Tengo ahora el honor de invitar al excelentísimo señor Paul Dlamini, viceprimer ministro de Suazilandia, a hacer uso de la palabra y pido al representante de protocolo que acompañe a su excelencia.
Co-chairs, His Excellency the President of Ecuador, the President of the UN General Assembly, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, United Nations Secretary General, Ministers, the Mayor of Ecuador, Quito, Ecuador, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I bring warm fraternal greetings from His Majesty Mswati III King Ngwenyama, the head of state of the Kingdom of Eswatini, the Queen Mother Ndlovukazi, and the entire Swazi nation. His Majesty would have loved to join you all for this eminent occasion. However, due to other pressing engagements, he has dedicated me to represent him and deliver the national statement of the Kingdom of Eswatini. On behalf of my country's delegation, I wish to express our profound gratitude to the Republic of Ecuador's government for the warm welcome and hospitality. Like all other Habitat stakeholders, the Swaziland government looks forward to fruitful deliberations as we usher in the Habitat 3 era. As we do so with excitement, we appreciate the work of the UN Habitat on Cities and Sustainable Urbanization, which has helped to define the focus and direction of our country's initiatives in sustainable human settlement development. In Swaziland, like in most parts of sub-Saharan Africa, we are experiencing rapid urbanization rate at an estimated national rate of 1.34%. This urbanization pattern is unsustainable and therefore requires urgent remedial strategies, as their impact, especially on the poorest of the poor, can no longer be ignored. It is imperative, resilient, economically productive, and adequately serviced. In order to move the country forward, the Kingdom of Eswatini has set forth a long-term national development policy framework affectionately known as Vision 2022. It is the desire of His Majesty King Mswati III and the Swazi nation that by 2022, Swaziland attains a developed country status with the living conditions of our people at par with those of advanced economies in the world. As a country, we hope that the advent of the urban agenda will largely influence the implementation of Vision 2022 with greater emphasis on sustainable urban development. Since Habitat 2, the government of Eswatini, working closely with other national agencies, has made some remarkable strides on the Habitat Agenda era. To this end, the country has embarked on the development, improvement, and review of different legislation that seek to improve security of tenure, especially on urban land, and provision of affordable housing to the citizenry. A noteworthy exercise is the present review of the Building and Housing Act, whose rationale is to incorporate new sustainable building technologies. These include, among others, aspects of the green economy and energy-efficient methods which are by and large environment-friendly. It will usher in cheaper alternatives of building materials, thereby positively influence the affordability of the housing and product and improve the provision of housing in the country. Similarly, the government of Eswatini has amended the Sectional Titles Act to align it with the necessary changing times. Its implementation will open up the housing sector, in particular home ownership for the low and middle income groups of society who were previously excluded from partaking in the real estate sector. In our quest to improve the standard of living of the country's citizenry, the government of Eswatini, through assistance from the World Bank, continues to upgrade informal settlements within the urban space. Through the Urban Development Project, the country has improved the delivery of basic services such as potable water supply, access to roads, and stormwater drainage, sewer services, etc. Funds permitting, it is government's aim to improve the living conditions in peri-urban settlements through improving access to safe water, sanitation, improving security of tenure, and reducing overcrowding, and improving the structural quality of housing. Habitat 2 has also resulted in the country's review of the housing policy to cover both urban and rural areas, with due consideration accorded to women, youth, and vulnerable groups. As part of its implementation, the country is presently involved on the delivery of affordable rental housing through Housing the Nation program. The program involves countrywide construction of institutional and affordable housing by Swaziland National Housing Board. Its rationale is to empower the country's citizenry through the provision of rental housing and home ownership. Striking a balance between the two augurs well for the country's skewed housing sector to the benefit of the nation as a whole. In conclusion, let me reiterate the Kingdom of Eswatini's continued support to the UN Habitat in the development of implementation of the new urban agenda in the post-Habitat 3 era. We are very confident and optimistic about the prospect of Habitat 3 in achieving a sustainable urban future globally. In preparing for the adoption of and implementation of the new urban agenda, member states should make an effort to adopt innovative approaches to address issues such as the eradication of poverty and slums, urban sprawl, security of tenure, access to basic services, infrastructure provision, as well as other key economic and social development considerations. I thank you for your attention.
I now give the floor to His Excellency Pakalitha Butuel Mosisili, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Lesotho. He will address the conference. I request the protocol to escort His Excellency.
Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, distinguished co-chairs, Secretary General of Habitat 3, distinguished members of the Bureau of Habitat 3, honorable ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and privilege for me to address this third United Nations Conference on Housing and Sustainable Urban Development, Habitat 3. Allow me from the onset to thank our host, His Excellency Rafael Correa, Constitutional President of this great country, the government and people of Ecuador, for the warm hospitality extended to us since our arrival here. I also wish to thank the UN Habitat, the Secretary General and the Bureau of Habitat 3 for working tirelessly with all stakeholders to make this conference possible. Lesotho welcomes the recently adopted Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and in particular SDG 11, mirrored so eloquently in the 8 pillars which are the hallmark of the African Union's transformative urban and human settlements agenda. The first pillar places great emphasis on the need to harness the potential of urbanization to accelerate structural economic transformation and inclusive growth. This pillar seeks to, inter alia, promote connectivity between rural and urban areas to harness the full potential of the urban-rural linkages. For us in Lesotho, inspired by this lofty ideal, we've embarked on a program of construction of rural access roads under the auspices of local councils. This has created employment for rural communities, thus initiating economic growth that is so critical in our effort to end hunger and eradicate poverty in terms of SDGs 1 and 2. We place emphasis on people-centered urban and human settlements development through promotion of community-driven participatory initiatives, which ensure accessibility to housing and urban basic services for all, inclusive of vulnerable people such as children, the elderly, and people with disabilities. Co-chairs, distinguished delegates, I wish to reaffirm Lesotho's commitment of achieving sustainable urban development by highlighting our national vision statement, as I quote, "By the year 2020, Lesotho shall be a stable democracy, a united and prosperous nation at peace with itself and its neighbors. It shall have a healthy and well-developed human resource base. Its economy will be strong, its environment well managed, and the foundations for technological advancement well established." End of quote. In pursuit of this vision, the coalition government which I lead committed to, and I quote, "build the capacity of local government and realign the relationship between central and local government. There will be a more balanced relationship between the two structures to ensure greater direct financial and technical support to local government authorities. The decentralization of support and services to local government will be accelerated." Unquote. To accord credence to this commitment, in August this year, His Majesty King Letsie III, who is head of state of the Kingdom of Lesotho, launched an aggressive endogenous leadership program which seeks to, 1, galvanize all tiers of leadership, from central government all the way down to the village leadership, to clearly define their respective roles and performance indicators within the health system. 2, execute and account for performance of roles identified. And 3, create a conducive resource environment for leaders to execute their defined roles in the health system. This leadership program, which starts within the health sector, already incorporates local government structures in line with our decentralization policy adopted in 2014. The leadership program falls directly under the office of the Prime Minister and will permeate other government ministries in due course. This program is further supported by Africa's 2063 commitment to, and I quote, "have capable institutions and transformative leadership in place at all levels," unquote. We applaud the luminary vision of the architects of the Africa We Want agenda, which includes Africa's desire to ensure that, and I quote, cities and other settlements are hubs of cultural and economic activities with modernized infrastructure, and people have access to all the basic necessities of life, including shelter, water, sanitation, energy, public transport, and ICT, unquote. Since the adoption of the SDGs in September 2015, Lesotho has embarked on an intensive education program to familiarize all relevant stakeholders with the contents of the laudable global program. Lesotho is currently reviewing its National Strategic Development Plan 2012 to 2017 to align it with Agenda 2063, the SDGs, and the Paris Climate Agreement, amongst others. The review will also incorporate the priorities of the new urban agenda. Co-chairs, distinguished delegates, we are committed to reform our land administration to respond to contemporary land issues. In this regard, we enacted the Land Act in 2010 as the main legislation for administration of land, including granting and converting title of land, land expropriation for public purposes, systematic regulation and adjudication, creation of related land courts and dispute settlement mechanisms. As already indicated, we've embarked on road infrastructure projects with designs to improve accessibility within our settlements. Tremendous impact has been achieved through the construction of new roads, upgrading of existing ones, and building of bridges. Government is in the process of developing the national housing policy within the overall framework of UN Habitat Global Housing Strategy. This policy aims to reposition housing at the center of the national and urban development, which is an imperative for a future of economic, environmental, cultural, and socially inclusive cities. We are also in the process of reviewing our Town and Country Planning Act, which is the principal legislation that regulates and guides orderly development of our human settlements. Co-chairs, distinguished delegates, in conclusion, allow me to associate my delegation with the Common Africa position on Habitat 3. We applaud the zeal and energy of its architects. They have produced a document we are proud to own. We reaffirm the principles agreed upon in N'Djamena that, and I quote, the African urban agenda should be owned and driven by Africa, informed by African realities, and based on Africa's current priorities as well as future needs. Be implementable and result-focused. The delegation of Lesotho will indeed stand to be counted as we chart a new path to the new urban agenda. I thank you.
I now have the floor. I have the honor to give the floor to Mr. Isador Santana, Minister of Economy, Planning and Development of the Dominican Republic, also speaking on behalf of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC. Good afternoon. Your Excellency, Mr. Rafael Correa, President of Ecuador and President of Habitat 3, Your Excellency Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellency Mr. Peter Thompson, President of the UN General Assembly, Your Excellency Mr. John Claus, Secretary General of Habitat 3, Your Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of civil society, Mr. President, in our quality as pro tempore chair of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC, let me join the others in congratulating you and the government of Ecuador on this very important conference, which we know will achieve great progress in considering city developments and human settlements towards sustainable economic development to promote the eradication of poverty, as well as the construction of economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable societies. We welcome the Toluca Declaration adopted at the regional meeting of the Latin American and Caribbean states participating in Habitat 3, which defines the progress and the challenges in constructing cities based on local realities and a vision for the future. We also wanted to express our profound gratitude to co-facilitators, Mexico and the Philippines, for the great effort and energy invested in negotiating this outcome document, which we welcome. We reiterate our aspiration, our common hope that we will achieve in a comprehensive fashion the ambitious 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, including its essential component, Sustainable Development Goals, which are of an integrated and indivisible nature, including, of course, Objective 11. Make sure that cities and human development become inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. To ensure access to all to adequate housing, basic services and transport systems, improvement of marginal areas, recognizing the relevance of urban and territorial development as a tool toward improving the well-being of society as a whole, giving special attention to all individuals, including women and those who find themselves in vulnerable situations, inter alia children, people with disabilities, and aged people. To achieve the eradication of poverty in all its forms, including extreme poverty, we need to take up the greatest global challenge, but which is indispensable as a prerequisite condition for sustainable development. We have shown our strong determination to eradicate extreme poverty and inequality in our part of the world. Furthermore, the commitment to leave nobody behind in the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda is in sync with our own commitment to combat growing inequalities and exclusions through development and implementation of effective public policies to prevent geographic segregation and environmental damage exacerbated by the urban development proceeding at a particularly high rate in our regions. Mr. President, member states believe that it's imperative to reaffirm our commitment to sustainable urban development as a critical phase as we move towards sustainable development. The new urban agenda should be implemented within the framework of respect for human rights and gender equality, and priority should be given to the equitable and sustainable development of human settlements as a way to fully develop each individual. We recognize that the city is a place where people meet, where culture thrives, where opportunities exist for the development of individuals, an expression of the plurality, which is life. We must ensure that all people, men and women in all societies, living in various conditions of human and cultural diversity, have full access to territory in the city and all the opportunities that the city brings, and guarantee their political participation, as well as participation in social, economic, and cultural activities in constructing and developing such cities. To construct cities with a focus on gender equality, to allow women of all developing cities to be on equal terms and develop fully, to have full advantage of the benefits of the city and its public spaces, take measures to ensure effective integration within the community and access for all, in particular, people with disabilities in cities and human settlements, providing favorable environment in terms of public transportation and services. In this regard, our member states of CELAC recognize the following key elements in the new urban agenda: adequate housing, ensuring within the framework of respect for human rights that housing is integrated and inclusive as part of the Sustainable Development Agenda, facilitating access for all individuals to adequate housing and services, safe and accessible, and an improvement of informal settlements. Urban and territorial planning. Incorporate within the urban design and development plans a sustainable approach to land management and territorial development, strengthening ties between the various urban areas, but also between urban and rural areas, with a view to establishing productive and harmonious relations among various environments, and promote a system of national planning which would incorporate a vision of both, which would recognize the functional relations and mutual dependencies that exist in the economic sphere between urban centers, also in the areas of the environment, technology, and social development. And this goes for the various urban nuclei and other types of human settlements. Urban government. The governance of cities should be improved at all levels in each city, including the relationship that the city enters into with rural areas, promoting mechanisms and legal frameworks that guarantee cooperation and coordination among municipal authorities and various levels of government. Water and health. Develop a system of water supply through pipes based on approach to proven cleanliness and health for all citizens, necessary to ensure equitable and universal access to potable water and hygienic services. Sustainable transport, mobility. We support the transition of cities toward the concept of sustainable mobility. So it should be inclusive and equitable, that meets the distinctive needs of individuals and communities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and promote security on the roads. This transition should be one of the priorities in terms of investment in infrastructure and should be part of the equitable distribution of public space. Land management. promote a social and environmental method of managing land, which would be inclusive and integrated to promote equitable societies through a policy of fair distribution of work and authority, overcoming the process of segregation, ensuring that land market should be based on the fair distribution of value created through the process of urban development, through fiscal, judicial, and urban development measures to avoid and prohibit speculative practices, the environment, resilience, and climate change. We highlight the impact on all human settlements and territories of climate change through promoting responsible and sustainable modes of consumption and production, sustainable use of natural resources, restoration of degraded systems. Also, step up preventive and reactive measures to raise the resilience level of cities in this regard, and their capability of recover after disasters and extreme events strike in the shortest possible time, minimizing human, environmental, and material losses through disaster risk management measures. Finally, we emphasize the fact that the right to the city is considered in some countries to be a guiding principle to make sure that people live in conditions necessary for them to exercise all human rights universally acknowledged. When these rights are respected and all actors and stakeholders live up to their responsibility and their commitment, this leads to effective urban development that provides opportunities for human beings everywhere. And since time immemorial, people have sought to concentrate in urban areas. Habitat 3 is the third such conference, but the first large conference of the United Nations to be held this year as part of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and the Paris Agreement. It's the first opportunity we have to introduce a new framework for development and work together on a global agenda for sustainable urban and rural development. We welcome this event. We thank the government of Ecuador and the city of Quito for their hospitality and recognize the work carried out to ensure the success of this conference, Habitat 3. Thank you very much.
De Estado de la República de Cuba por su declaración. Tengo ahora el honor de invitar a la excelentísima señora María Leonor Robredo, vicepresidente y presidente del Consejo de Coordinación de Vivienda y Desarrollo Urbano de la República de Filipinas, a hacer uso de la palabra. Y pido al representante del protocolo que acompañe a su excelencia.
Your Excellency, President Rafael Correa, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to everyone. Let me begin by expressing our deep appreciation to the government and the people of Ecuador for their warm welcome and excellent hosting. Habitat 3 is of much importance to the global development framework, as it is the first major intergovernmental conference after the landmark year of 2015, which saw the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, together with the Sendai Framework, Addis Ababa Action Agenda, and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. We welcome in this regard the new Urban Agenda, which charts our course for sustainable urban development for the next 20 years. The Philippines was privileged to be a co-facilitator in its negotiations. As co-facilitator, our aim was to ensure that the new urban agenda would be people-centered, inclusive, and development-oriented. As we here at Habitat 3 examine how best to implement the commitments under the new urban agenda, we offer our national report on better, greener, smarter cities in an inclusive Philippines as our contribution to deepening the discussion.
Excellency President Rafael Correa, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to everyone. Let me begin by expressing our deep appreciation to the government and the people of Ecuador for their warm welcome and excellent hosting. Habitat 3 is of much importance to the Global Development Framework, as it is the first major intergovernmental conference after the landmark year of 2015, which saw the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, together with the Sendai Framework, Addis Ababa Action Agenda, and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. We welcome in this regard the new urban agenda, which charts our course for sustainable urban development for the next 20 years. The Philippines was privileged to be a co-facilitator in its negotiations. As co-facilitator, our aim was to ensure that the new urban agenda would be people-centered, inclusive, and development-oriented. As we here at Habitat 3 examine how best to implement the commitments under the new urban agenda, we offer our national report on better, greener, smarter cities in an inclusive Philippines as our contribution to deepening the discussion and identifying emergent challenges. Since Habitat 2, the Philippines has become one of the fastest growing economies in Asia. Our economy grew by 7% in the second quarter of 2016, on track to meet the government's 7% to 8% full-year growth target. However, challenges remain in terms of job creation, increased income, and reduced informal settlements. Considering that our main metropolitan areas and cities contribute 80% of our total economic output, we have to put in place a more strategic, integrated approach towards sustainable urban development. First, we will harness our demographic window of opportunity. Half of our 100 million population is below 25 years old. But young people also constitute 50% of the country's unemployed. Investment in education and skills development for them is needed so that they can become the driving force of the fast modernizing urban economy. Second, we will capacitate local governments to actively plan and deliver services to a rapidly growing urban population. Currently, we face a proliferation of informal settlements, increasing traffic congestion, and worsening pollution levels. To address this, we need urban management and decision-making that is evidence-based, including through urban information databases and systems. It is vital to build technical and financial capabilities of local governments and capitalize on our international networks to develop better urban solutions. Third, mainstreaming climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction and management in local development and land use planning and ensuring environmental integrity will be needed. As one of the most vulnerable in the world to disasters and the effects of climate change, it is crucial that we build cities that are safer and more resilient. It is crucial that the support for sustainable use and management of ecosystems and address waste management, pollution, and emissions. Fourth, we will promote a multi-level response of new areas
of urban challenges. Some of the challenges brought about by urbanization go beyond territorial and political boundaries. Thus, interventions must not just improve local capacities, but also include metropolitanization, clustering of urban centers, and multi-level governance. Fifth, to achieve inclusive growth, we will work on spatial convergence of plans, programs, and activities, and strengthen coordination between national, subnational, and local governments. The archipelagic nature of our country requires growth strategies that incorporate geographical and sectoral considerations, including strengthening the network of urban centers and improving urban and rural connectivity. And finally, sixth,
es parte de una campaña que iniciamos hoy entre la Coalición de Clima por el Clima y el Aire Limpio y la Organización Mundial de la Salud, en que nos juntamos para crear una red global de aire limpio, porque el aire limpio significa que creas salud buena y políticas, y para llegar al aire limpio se necesitan políticas públicas limpias. Y esto mejora también el clima, no solo el aire local, pero también el clima. So what I'm going to do, we're going to start, and very quickly we want to share the commitment of various ministers and also various mayors to these issues, and also from UN Habitat. And we're going to start with the first committee. The idea is to be very quick. This is all going to be in our internet, and all the people who are committing to this campaign will be receiving regularly a lot of information, films. You'll see one little film today, which is part of the conference. Yo voy a empezar para introducir a ustedes una persona muy importante, que es la vicedirectora de la UN Habitat, and she's also the Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations. Aisha Kasa. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting me. My names are Aisha Chirabo Kachira, and I'm the Deputy Executive Director, Assistant Secretary General of UN Habitat. I am very delighted and honored to be here. And I first of all want to thank most sincerely the organizers of this event and the founders of this initiative. Specifically, I want to thank the government of Norway, who is a really great partner of ours, our sister agency WHO, and the Clean Air Coalition. I want to commend you for recognizing the role of mayors in this. I am former mayor of Kigali, and being in UN Habitat has given me another big opportunity to work very closely with mayors across the globe. We are committed as UN Habitat, through our networks with mayors, through our expertise, to bring on board three quick things. And in that I want to say that we would like to partner in this particular area to do those three things. The first one is we need to assess the level of air quality. Because it's one thing feeling it, it's another the reality of it. Just to give an example, in Colombia, we are starting in 5 intermediate cities a program to help the cities and the city leaders to know what the baseline is and how they're going to monitor this. And we take this seriously because it's part of the SDG, Paris Agreement, and the New Urban Agenda. The second point is, as you saw last evening, we want to support mayors by celebrating success and sharing experiences, and in so doing avail the relevant tools, especially strategizing on key elements. For instance, public transport that we are doing already with Medellin, which is assessing so that we can enhance public transport, better solid waste management, construction, and in the end really achieve what we are looking for. So I want to thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. Brilliant. It's all about transparency, all about commitment, and showing not only where the clean or the dirty areas, but what we're doing to address it. Thank you very much. Ahora tenemos el gusto y placer de encontrar la ministra de Salud del Ecuador, Margarita Guevara. Mucho gusto, Margarita. ¿Qué vamos a hacer, qué estás haciendo en Ecuador para limpiar el aire y proteger a la salud de la población? Por favor.
Muy buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Margarita Guevara, soy médica y estoy a cargo de esta cartera de Estado que es el Ministerio de Salud. Primera vez en estos años, ambiente y salud están tomados de la mano y trabajando en conjunto. Nos damos cuenta cada vez que esa segunda, tercera y cuarta piel que tenemos, que es el entorno, que es el medio ambiente, que es la casa donde habitamos, influyen positiva o negativamente en la salud. Son los determinantes de la salud que influyen en el bienestar. Ahora mismo en Ecuador tenemos al año 1.700 casos de fallecimientos causados por situaciones que conlleva cuando hay un aire contaminado, cuando no hay una recolección de basura adecuada, cuando no tenemos el agua que necesita la población. Estamos trabajando en políticas públicas con el Ministerio del Ambiente, con los ministerios correspondientes y con los GATS, que estamos en una hoja de ruta, incorporándoles cada vez más para que sean gobiernos autónomos o municipios certificados, cumpliendo indicadores por el Ministerio de Salud Pública. Es importante que pensemos que ahora no es suficiente una política pública para curar enfermedades. Tenemos el enfoque de la Estrategia de Atención Primaria de Salud, donde la promoción de la salud, la prevención de enfermedades es nuestra línea como Ministerio de Salud Pública y con un enfoque intersectorial. No solamente salud lo trabaja o lo otorga el Ministerio de Salud. Tenemos que de la mano trabajar con la corresponsabilidad de diferentes sectores y la participación de la ciudadanía. En esa tarea estamos.
Encantado. Es la salud pública y la intersectorialidad liderada por el Ministerio de la Salud. Tenemos el gustazo, estamos esperando a la ministra de Vivienda de Chile, que acaba de llegar. Magnífico. Muchísimo gusto encontrarla. Muchísimo gusto. Usted nos va a contar las cosas espectaculares que está haciendo Chile en términos de calidad del aire.
Muy bien.
Paulina Segal.
Zaval. Bueno, muy buenas tardes a todos y a todas. De verdad, un placer compartir con ustedes este momento. Nosotros en Chile estamos conscientes que todo el mundo hoy día debe comprometerse con los temas del cambio climático, aún más luego del Acuerdo de París. Sin embargo, nuestras ciudades no solamente están afectadas por los impactos del cambio climático, sino que por un fenómeno propio que es la contaminación atmosférica. Y así hemos buscado aunar en una misma estrategia los cambios de adaptación a los impactos del cambio climático y esta cruzada por el aire limpio en nuestras ciudades. Y lo hemos hecho por varias vías. En primer lugar, al igual que Ecuador, como un trabajo intersectorial que combina al gobierno nacional, a los gobiernos regionales y a los gobiernos locales, pero que se ha concentrado fundamentalmente en 3 medidas. En las medidas asociadas a la calefacción domiciliaria. Nuestro gran causante de la contaminación atmosférica es el uso de la leña, que es el combustible más barato, pero uno de los más contaminantes. Y para ello hemos buscado un conjunto de medidas destinadas a acondicionar térmicamente las viviendas, a generar recambio de calefactores, etcétera. Pero un segundo agente importante de nuestra contaminación es el transporte. Y es por eso que nuestras medidas, especialmente las áreas metropolitanas, tienen que ver con la restricción vehicular, aún a los vehículos con sello verde. También el generar una mayor fluidez fluidez del transporte urbano y introducir ahora con nuestro nuevo plan de Santiago Respira los Euro 6 como norma para nuestro transporte, tanto particular como del transporte público. Y finalmente tenemos que poner incentivos, y esos incentivos tienen que ver con el ahorro del consumo de energía. Conjuntamente con la campaña por el clima, por el aire, estamos en una campaña muy fuerte de ahorro de energía, que nos permita que nuestra energía entonces sea limpia, sea más accesible para garantizar el bienestar de las personas, la salud de los habitantes y el aire limpio de nuestras ciudades.
Excelente, ministra de Vivienda, trabajando con el aire limpio en Chile de una forma muy importante. Tenemos un gusto también de encontrar muchos otros hispanoparlantes, por ejemplo, Jalisco, en México, que aquí nos va a contar qué está haciendo. Por favor, empecemos con su nombre.
Gracias. Muy buenas tardes, mi nombre es Magdalena Ruiz, soy la secretaria de Medio Ambiente y Desarrollo Territorial. Nosotros estamos trabajando en una reconfiguración muy significativa en el tema del programa de calidad del aire. Nos apoyamos con el Instituto de Calidad, Institute Clear Institute, con EPACAL, revisamos nuestros modelos de verificación, cuáles eran las obsolencias, el proceso de corrupción, para no repetir esos modelos e innovar nuevos procesos en la verificación vehicular para que esté blindada y sea muy transparente para el ciudadano. También estamos haciendo todo un monitoreo de nuestros contaminantes de vida corta, sobre todo el carbón negro. Estamos sumándolos en el tema de lo de cambio climático y estamos reconfigurando nuestra red de monitoreo para que sea a nivel de modelaje. También estamos generando procesos de movilidad, destaco el de movilidad escolar y un trabajo muy significativo, una inversión muy sustantiva del Fondo Metropolitano en el tema de movilidad con diferentes visiones. Y por último, para destacar de muchas de las acciones que estamos haciendo, vamos a lanzar una campaña muy fuerte de comunicación con los ciudadanos para que los ciudadanos sepan que el aire es como el agua, nuestro primer alimento, y tiene que estar igual de limpio cuando entre a nuestros pulmones. Entonces, nos comprometemos profundamente a trabajar con su iniciativa. Es un privilegio acompañarlos porque es lo que queremos que pase en Jalisco, un aire limpio.
Magnífico, y el aire es como el agua. Aquí ya tenemos un slogan espectacular. Vamos a pasar ahora a un grupo de alcaldes de Colombia. Cada uno diga por favor su nombre y qué está haciendo en su comunidad. Puede levantarse también.
Claro. Bueno, mi nombre es Eugenio Prieto. Soy el director del área metropolitana del Valle de la Aburrá, Medellín. Está conformado por 10 municipios. Es la segunda conurbación más grande de Colombia. Y tenemos una complejidad en el valle porque es el valle más grande del departamento de Antioquia en Colombia, pero el más pequeño para una ciudad tan grande como Medellín y las 10 ciudades que lo integran. Aquí tenemos los alcaldes del Valle de la Aburrá que enseguida se dirigirán. Y eso hace que tengamos problemas parecidos a los de Chile con Santiago, porque cuando se presentan no solo problemas de contaminación, sino atmosféricos, por ejemplo, con los fenómenos como el del Niño, nos amarra la lluvia y baja mucho la nubosidad y nos pone como un tapón entre las nubes. Y es como cuando una chimenea está prendida, los contaminantes se quedan flotando en el aire y nos generan mucho problema en la salud. Entonces estamos haciendo investigaciones epidemiológicas en salud sobre los efectos del material particulado 2PM.5, 2.5 y material ultrafino. Y estamos trabajando, mejorando todo el tema que tiene que ver con la integración del transporte público, la movilidad no motorizada. Hoy vamos a reclamar con el alcalde de la ciudad de Medellín el Móvil Price, precisamente por la integración del transporte masivo con el transporte público colectivo, con los cables y con un programa que tenemos en el área metropolitana que se llama Encicla. Y estamos trabajando con el Instituto de Aire Limpio de Washington todo el tema que tiene que ver con el plan de descontaminación ambiental del Valle del Aburrá, fundamentalmente cogiendo la calidad del aire en un escenario de gestión del riesgo. Y en ese orden de ideas, pues vamos avanzando con un compromiso con la propia ciudadanía en un pacto por el mejoramiento de la calidad del aire, tratando de cambiar comportamientos y construyendo cultura ciudadana para tener un aire limpio en todo el Valle del Aburrá, Medellín.
Espectacular. Y además tenéis todo el grupo de alcaldes que hace parte de la misma región metropolitana que están aquí. Quería que nomás se presentara con su nombre para que sepamos todos que están implicados. Gracias.
Muy bien, mi nombre es Oscar Restrepo, soy alcalde de Colombia, departamento de Antioquia, y pertenecemos al área metropolitana más grande de Colombia, trabajando por el aire y por la calidad de vida de los ciudadanos colombianos y de Antioquia.
Raúl Cardona, alcalde del municipio de Envigado perteneciente al área metropolitana, y hemos decretado el 40% de nuestro territorio como áreas protegidas para la conservación y el mejoramiento del medio ambiente.
Iván Alonso Montoya, alcalde de Sabaneta, Antioquia, totalmente comprometido con la educación de toda la comunidad para la protección del aire.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Johnny Alexander García Yepes, alcalde del municipio de La Estrella, al sur del Valle del Aburrá, y tengo el privilegio de tener 2 reservas forestales de protección, la reserva del Romeral, la reserva de Miraflores, quien es el pulmón de todo el Valle del Aburrá.
Excelente, muchísimas gracias. El aire viaja muy lejos, es muy importante trabajar con los vecinos. Medellín nos está dando un ejemplo muy claro. I'm looking for the people from Kathmandu, and we just met, but I'm not seeing where they are. While I'm looking for them, I'm going to give the microphone to Sol, who has been managing air quality in the municipality in the Amazon.
Okay.
¿Quién es y qué estás haciendo para limpiar el aire?
Buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Soy Saúl Cárdenas, alcalde de Sucúa, alcalde amazónico, presido 46 alcaldías de la Amazonía, Galápagos, Baños y Penipe. Un honor estar aquí. Nosotros lo que estamos haciendo es una planificación con la participación de la ciudadanía, y especialmente con la participación de los niños y los jóvenes. ¿Y qué hacemos con ellos? Hablamos de respira vida, pero con ellos plantamos árboles en los parques, en los márgenes de los ríos, limpiamos la contaminación de los ríos, limpiamos las calles, limpiamos las partes públicas. Tenemos una ordenanza que dice Sucúa libre de humo, todos los espacios públicos, y eso significa respirar vida. Pero estoy acá no como alcalde, sino como un ser humano. Soy padre de familia, amo a mi familia, amo a mis hijos, amo a mi patria, amo a mi Sucúa, a mi Amazonía, y estoy para que juntemos entre todos el esfuerzo y hagamos de respirar vida, porque la enfermedad y la muerte nos causa dolor, nos causa tristeza, y queremos, ahora que estamos en esta campaña importante de Respira Vida, entre todos sumarnos para que nuestra planificación esté como eje principal la salud y esté también el tema de la purificación del aire. Muchas gracias a todos y a todas.
Muchísimas gracias. Y el verde ayuda a limpiar el humo. Nepal. It's Kathmandu specifically, or is it Nepal?
Very good afternoon, everyone. This is Kalanidhi Devkota, Chief Executive, Municipal Association of Nepal. It's a great pleasure being with you in such an important event. All the way from top of the world, some 40 hours flight to get to this beautiful city, and very much a similar landscape also. Today I'm going to share with you that the Nepal government and my association, actually basically I work for the Association of Municipalities, the entire municipalities of Nepal. I work for the organization. And the government of Nepal has come up with environment-friendly local governance as a kind of policy that exclusively developed to address the air pollution and urban environment, and for which our association is rigorously working hard to institutionalized at the local level, because most of the plans and policies are made at the central level, and the challenge that we face is to localize what we already felt during localization of the Millennium Development Goals. Luckily, we have now one of the goals exclusively dedicated to cities in the Sustainable Urban Development Goals, a sustainable goal, and there is also correlation with such kind of policies. And lastly, also I would like to mention one thing here, that my association together with ICLEI South Asia had done a study about the carbon emission in Nepal, and we found very interesting findings out of the study, that Washington DC alone contributes carbon like 82 metric ton, whereas the cities like Kathmandu are only contributing 0 point something. I mean, the developed countries are emitting a lot of carbon, whereas the underdeveloped and developing countries are suffering from the impact. That is also very point to be taken into account. Thank you so much for this opportunity. We'll have more opportunity to interact in the next round. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's all the municipalities in Nepal. This is great. Now, we'll have to take the other interviews or the other commitments outside. So we're closing the meeting. Now we're just showing a very 1-minute video, which is part of the Global Communications Campaign. And you can see it on the screens. Off you go.